We're live. Okay. Hi, everybody. Everyone watching the replays, probably. I'm here with the lovely Leigh today, and we're going to jump straight in. I like to keep these videos short, around half an hour. So, Leigh, if you could just please introduce yourself, give a little bit of background about where you're from and what you do, and a bit about Grey, and then whatever you care to share about your journey.
My name is Leigh Livne. I moved to Israel 6 years ago, and I created a support group for therapy and just general support in a community for women and hopefully men that are survivors of sexual trauma, anything from serious sexual harassment or abuse, assault, rape. And all of the sessions are conducted in English. I don't have any background in therapy or any kind of like medical profession. I'm actually a marine biologist, marine scientist. And so my work is primarily as a scientific coordinator for a marine research station. So I really had no background on how to approach this topic and how to find help myself. And then later on, I decided, how can I find help for others that don't have to go through the same sort of thing that I am. So that's kind of the background of Grey, the community. And we're actually expanding now to more support groups. And hopefully in a couple of years, maybe we could even go for something like an official Amuta and try to make some real progress and keep expanding.
Right. So, for those watching who don't know, because it's an international group that we're broadcasting in here, Amuta's organization, right? Amuta is organization.
Yes, like an NGO.
NGO.
No,
Go ahead. NGO. So, Leigh's based in Israel, where I am too, and you started Grey, which is a support group currently for women, but hopefully in the future for men as well, for sexual trauma. Okay, and that came about because you couldn't find an English-speaking community here for that, and then you decided to create one yourself, as you do.
Yeah. If I can't find a solution, I'll make the solution.
And that's something that is that something that you've always, like, has that always been something like, oh, if I can't find it, I'm just going to create it?
Yeah. When I moved to Israel the first time, I had no family or friends here, and I was in an a cappella group in England, and decided basically that I miss singing a lot. I can't afford as a student to, I don't know, go do sing lessons or to join any kind of group. And I don't, professional singers, that's their job. I obviously don't have time as a student to take on work as singing. I don't want it to be a profession. I just want it to be a hobby. And I couldn't find a group that sang in English. And at the time I didn't speak Hebrew. So I just started an a cappella group with another friend of mine. And it went on for 3 years before we stopped.
Amazing.
So basically, I'm very if I can't find it, I try to exhaust all previous options, and then I'll just do something myself. Hopefully, it works.
That's incredible. You do know that that's quite extraordinary, yeah?
I guess someone's always going to start something. I mean, you started your business. I see everywhere around me people starting and doing their own thing, just making it happen. So,
well, that's something that I really, really love, the fact that it's kind of a trend now. Like, you look at a challenge that you've overcome, and this is something that's actually, I literally just went through this. My post from last night talks about this, that I was faced with a challenge. And so I looked back at when I've faced a challenge in the past, how did I overcome it, and just applied it. again because I realized that okay, it helped me last time, so hopefully it's going to help
Yeah.
me again. And I think that it's like it's a tool that we have and we don't often use it, like because
Yeah.
throughout life we overcome multiple challenges like regularly, Um, but I think it's really cool that this is what you've been doing. I think it's incredibly needed. Um, how's it been going? What's happening with Grey? How's it developing? How long has it been happening?
I basically in 2018 I started having an idea. Well, it's kind of been a long time coming. The name Grey comes from a concept that predates the Me Too kind of movement, which was called Grey rape culture, where this idea of women didn't feel comfortable speaking out about it because there's this whole, societal, internal, and external struggle with what is rape, what is the definition. A lot of people were humans, so we like to define things and put them in boxes, and if they don't fit the box quite enough to what we subjectively think, then we throw it out the window and it's not rape and it's not assault, and it's actually classified as this, so therefore you should feel different about it. And a lot of people just don't even want to get into that, so when they experience something they just clam up and they don't say something, which is wrong, because the way you feel, the way you might experience something and the way you handle it is completely different to somebody else. And there's no need for a dictionary in that situation. It's not really definable, or it's can be defined in so many ways that you can't just have one definition. So because of this concept, I was thinking about Grey rape a lot, and I started really reading about it, and having that initial, like, yes, what I went through was serious, and I've been downplaying it, and other people that I've tried to say things have been downplaying it, and that wasn't fair, and that's not helping at all with my situation. So there's that initial rush of injustice, and then you're like, okay, so now how do I process this? So the idea kind of came from that, and then I moved to Israel. And I just found it extremely difficult to live here. I had already moved to 4 other countries. So I thought that Israel wouldn't be that difficult, especially since I had lived in England. So I thought that it was going to be more European here. And it was just like a reverse clash because I'm American. So it was a reverse clash of moving and living around so many Americans, and a completely different, really, a way of thinking, like humor. And it was very frustrating because I already was not Jewish. So I didn't have any family or friends when I moved here. And then I didn't have, everyone was like, oh, you're an American, you're amongst your people. And I was like, really, no, conversations. We don't talk about the same politics. We don't have the same kind of, most people I met were liberal, but you have Eurocentric versus American kind of, it was just very difficult, and I felt very alone. And then I had a very difficult relationship for 2 years. And after that relationship ended, I just felt myself really angry, which I had never felt angry before. I'd always been sad or disappointed and felt like things weren't fair, but okay, keep going, keep working. And then I just had this anger inside me, like I made a really bad choice moving to Israel or something, and I didn't like having that. And I had to stay here because I was working on my doctorate. And so again, I was just like, well, how do I, get over this? And right around the same time, the Me Too movement was coming out. And so women were more likely to talk about it. All of these conversations were again in the limelight and much more accepted. And I felt like people were listening, and also that women felt like they could talk more. So the biggest problem with having a community like this, is that it's not, it still has a stigma attached to it. You can have a stigma yourself of, no, I need to just get over it. Keep your head down, carry on. And then there's the whole society around you. So many women experience this because nobody's talking about it. The only people that talk about it are usually people that don't know what they're talking about. And it just makes the whole situation around it worse. So I felt like for the first time, women were okay with admitting to this and then saying, like, yes, this did happen to me. So that's when I started Grey. but it originally was just like pilots. I approached it just like I approach research. You read as much about it as you can. You find the gaps. You conduct some sort of trial or some sort of pilot survey to see, is it needed? How can I change my method? What's exactly needed? What are my questions that I want to answer, et cetera, et cetera. And so I did that with a few groups of women, and I realized that a lot of the women, all of them said, this is so needed. Yes. I mean, they would all say, I'm doing one-on-one therapy, but thank goodness for my parents, because I can't afford it. There's no subsidized healthcare for me. And so my parents pay, or I'm paying a significant amount of my paycheck in a very expensive country anyway, to one-on-one therapy. And the reason why I started thinking about this is that I definitely couldn't afford therapy, private therapy, and the therapy that's given to you by Clalit. It's like a Hebrew speaker, and it's with my schedule. I'm working full time. It just didn't work, and I definitely did not want to just go to medication as a default. And so I basically, that's where Gray came from. I was like, maybe just what I need for this kind of post, working with the event afterwards, for so many years afterwards. Maybe all I need is a support group. And I was like, and I'm sure, because I'm not, a special cupcake, I'm sure there's a lot of other women that need just a little bit of support and someone to listen to them. And they don't have the money, and they're not willing to, they don't need the long-term medication. So I had these few meetings, and then I decided that I wanted to do something a little bit more structured. I noticed that a lot of the women weren't coming. Basically, I don't think that, without a licensed therapist and a facilitator that was trained in dealing with sexual trauma, I feel like a lot of women didn't. It's nice to have a support group, but even just having a support group by somebody with good intentions isn't enough. You need to have somebody trained. So one of the girls, I took a step back from Gray for about 6 months. One of the girls approached me and said, I'd really like to have another meeting. Are you in a good space to start up again? And so she created the event. And from that came Dr. Tova Leign from Israel, who said she'd like to learn more. And since then, we've been having these sessions with women. We've had 8, I believe, all with around 5 to 10 women. And now we have a very small group of like 5 women. We're meeting actually tomorrow. And we talk about a certain aspect each time. Last time was how to talk to your friends who haven't been through something like this. How do you discuss with them so that they are helpful to you and don't make you want to clam up and hide in a little box? And that was so productive that tomorrow we're going to go on and have that meeting again, and delve into, okay, now we've learned how to talk to friends. Now, how do we further build our support network, like safely for us? And that's kind of a very long overview of how Gray got started. And right now in the process, I'm working on now the next step, which is opening another group with another 2 facilitators, and then possibly a 3rd group for men. I had so much interest in that from therapists and facilitators saying it's so needed and it's completely not available. So I'm thinking to open up one for men, a small group, and hosting in collaboration some workshops and lectures.
Amazing. And I've said this in the past, but if I can help in any way, then I will definitely want to help, especially with opening the men's group. Actually, I think that's really important as well. I think that's really awesome direction as well. It's amazing how I find how amazing it is that in 2020 we don't have these kind of tools and resources more accessible and more just out there and talked about. And literally it's 2020 and we now are like asking, like you have created a support group so that women, and it's 5 women that can talk about how to talk about what they've been through to their friends. Like, it's just mind-blowing to me that
Yeah.
this is something that needs to be, that isn't just common knowledge. It's not taught in schools, how to handle trauma, how to process emotions, how to regulate emotions, how to talk to, like, how to communicate about difficult things. It's just
Regulating emotions. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I actually reflect on a lot with my parents are wonderful, but I know a lot of parents, childhood is like the way that they teach the children is something built on shame and they don't teach how to regulate emotions, or they distract emotions with physical or material things in order to just distract the person from dealing with their emotions. I think that's changing now. I'm hearing a lot of parents who are specifically working on that, on if there's a problem, or talking it through. Um, and there's so much. I'm so glad to see that there's such a push towards this mental health, even from a young age, and that things like gender norms and these kind of ideals and stereotypes, to stop reinforcing them in our kids over and over, because it's a huge reason why women are quiet when something happens in their childhood, and it goes even into their adulthood, where they have this ultimate shame, like humans, I think, naturally, inherently are likely to blame themselves. They're I think it's not natural for someone, for a very small percentage of the population who exhibit neuroses or narcissistic tendencies. Maybe those people are immediately going to reflect all blame. But I think most people I meet, first they pause in any situation and at least consider, in part, how could I have done better? And that's something that is just, all of these things are not taught when you're a kid. Like I see it with a lot of my friends, but it's changing.
100%. I mean, the thing is, our parents didn't have the tools. They weren't taught either.
Yeah.
They're just passing on what they know. So that,
People little.
most of the parents do the best that they can with what they know.
Yes.
But I can say that when I was raped when I was 15, and my parents, they didn't know what to do with it, how to handle it, and they were like, "Don't tell anyone." And so I made it feel like it's a secret, and that I should be ashamed of it. Like, it's something that I should be ashamed of, that, as in, I did something wrong, and it was very much internalizing this sense of blame and shame.
Yes.
Um, Whereas I seriously remember feeling, I want to tell everyone because they're the ones that need to be shamed, not me.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand why I was being told to keep it quiet. Um, it just felt so counterintuitive to me, in a way.
Yes.
Very, very much amplified this sense of shame and self-blame. Um, and there's something else I wanted to say with the parents. You said with the blame and shame, pregnancy brain. Hold on. It will come to me.
Well, no, especially when you talk about how you had the courage anyway to come up and say something, right, like, I don't know, right away, but you said something, and then to be met with, like, just, it makes such a huge impression.
I mean, the thing is, I didn't even think it was. I didn't realize it was rape. I thought I was to blame, and I told a friend, and then she told me, Emily, that's rape. You're 15, and the situation was X, and that's rape. And I was like, oh shit, okay. So then I told my sister,
Yeah,
and then she made me tell the parents, and then I told the parents, and then they told me to keep quiet.
the
So
chain. And then
basically,
I went back down the chain, and everybody stayed quiet.
yeah.
Wow.
But there was something else that I want to say about the tools and about the blame and internalizing the shame, but never mind, it will come to me later. Um, I think that I mean, look, this is why I'm trying to do what I'm doing, which is providing the tools that we needed growing up. Because I remember now. I see that we inherently want to avoid discomfort. Um, and for my parents, that was a big one. Like anything that caused discomfort was just a big no, no, I had to avoid it. So me getting raped was a huge discomfort. So they just didn't want to deal with it. It's just like, no, 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 this is too uncomfortable. These emotions are way too big. Like we don't know what to do with it. No, 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 no. Um, and that is something that I then internalized. And growing up, it was I just want to avoid discomfort. So I turned to drink and drugs and whatever because I just didn't want to feel
Yeah.
my feelings because they're uncomfortable for me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we also see that now just in everyday ways when we look at parents with their children when they're raising kids. If a child's crying, that causes us discomfort because the child's crying. It's an uncomfortable noise. That's an uncomfortable. We have a negative reaction to that. So
Yeah.
we just try and like say, okay, how can we cheer you up? How can we make you stop crying? Just stop the crying. We'll give you chocolate. We'll give you this. We'll give you toys. Whatever. But the thing is that then we're teaching the child not to feel his emotions. That there's something wrong with his emotion. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay,
Yes.
sometimes obviously you check if a child is crying, is he hungry? Is he thirsty? Is he changed? Is he cold, hot, whatever? You go through all the like checklists. But sometimes it's just frustration
Yeah.
or anger or sadness, and then that's okay. So cry. That's okay. You can cry, and I'm here. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that parents I see because I've become a parent recently, and it's something that I'm learning, and I'm very much like kind of immersing myself in everything to do with parenting. But that's a real issue. And I think that many people, I mean, we can see it just in general in relationships at all, like when someone is angry. I have a real issue with anger because that's uncomfortable. And I was raised to avoid discomfort. So if my partner's angry with me, I'm like, why are you angry? What have I done? And how can I fix it? And what have I done? And just stop being angry. It's like, it's just panic. Um, Whereas it's totally okay. Sometimes there's healthy anger. If a boundary's been crossed for whatever reason, then it's okay to be angry. And that's fine. Like learning to sit with discomfort and get comfortable with discomfort. Some of the, there's good discomfort and bad discomfort, but to learn to be okay with just feeling your feelings, even if they're uncomfortable, that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge tool. That's a huge skill that we don't know how to do.
Yes. Yes,
You know?
definitely. Yeah.
Um, that's what I want to say. I forgot.
Oh yeah, and I think that's something when I was very angry. I mean, I was just very cynical and angry here after my first. I was kind of like, okay, I've had enough. Like I've done the working, I've kept my head down. I've done the schooling. I've done all of it without any, the help that you're supposed to get, and I'm just frustrated. Like things are just not going well, and I think that was a lot of the. And I also had a lot of anger, but it would only come out. I guess my biggest vice was also drinking because I lived in England since I was 17. So it was around me all the time. And it was very distracting. And it made me, if I had, because I was the American at 17 and I had never lived in England before. So I was being made fun of and I was, a bit anxious, new country, completely alone, and the drinking helped, made me more social, and I had friends for the like kind of the first time. I didn't really have friends growing up, so I learned to associate alcohol with unknowingly being distracting because I didn't know that I even had feelings to deal with from my childhood abuse, and then that just became fun, and I had friends, and I was like, this is good, and only when I moved to Israel when I realized that alcohol here is not as much socially accepted, I guess, or to that amount of drinking and having fun is not accepted. And I think that's when my anger started coming out because I was like, okay, I had my coping mechanism. I had a lot of fun in the UK, and this is how I made friends. And here, nobody wants to drink with me, and I'm not going to drink alone because it wasn't to that level of like an addiction. But I didn't know how else to interact with people and have a good time and kind of get away. So, and I haven't really found something yet, to be honest, that has helped with that. I just stopped drinking. Um, I now only have a few, I'll say like once a year, I have like a really heavy drinking episode, and then I'm hungover and it's awful, and then it's done. But it's so much less. And in a way, just moving to Israel helped with that. I mean, I'm really glad that I didn't stay in England, get married and stay in England, because I would have kept having fun. Gray never would have happened, never dealing with all of these things. It just wouldn't have happened. I would have just married someone. We would drink in a pub until we died. So it's really fun. And I have a lot of fun and laughter. And whenever I go back to England, every time I'm like, wow, I'm having the best time. I'm actually laughing. And, so in Israel, I don't have the same kind of temperament and humor. But it's still a much healthier choice. And I'm slowly coming around to it in my own ways to kind of deal with it. And one of them being helping others. And I've kind of found my other ways to deal with it here.
I mean, one of the things that just jumps out is environment, and the importance of environment, and like a toxic environment, and then a supportive environment. And I mean, you moved to Israel, so the alcohol kind of aspect of it was removed, and then suddenly all these emotions surfaced. But then you had Gray and a support group here, so that kind of is a different. I think that environment is something that's also very much overlooked when looking at, self-healing and overcoming challenges. Environment is a big factor. I mean, I was only able to get sober when my two biggest drinking buddies relocated. And then, they moved, and then I was like, now I can stop drinking. I can, as in I can quit. And I don't have not that they were bad influences. I was probably just as bad of an influence, but we all influencing each other. And when they moved away, I was suddenly like, okay, if I make this decision, I'm not going to be judged in a way for it. It's not going to be that much harder to do, because I have to kind of explain myself or excuse myself, or I won't be as tempted. When the environment changes, then things change.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say that when they're, especially with addicts, they say check the environment, because you cannot heal in the same environment that you got sick in, they say. So
there was a time when I decided to stop, and it was like it was 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago, when I said like, okay, I'm not. And my partner at the time, the not so good relationship was carrying on, and I was like, I have way too much responsibility at work, and I'm stopping, and you can do whatever you want. I can't change you, but I can change me. And then and then afterwards it was quite hard, because it was really all that I had. But I had some friends that I had made that I specifically would try not to see, because I knew that they really wanted to drink, and I was really trying, I was doing as best as I possibly could to be like, I don't want to drink even more than a glass of wine, like one glass of wine, but not more than that. And it was really, really hard. It's almost impossible, because you don't want to turn some away, as a friend. But then there's that pressure of saying, can we not? And they're like, what's wrong? Like, why aren't you? And it's like, oh shit, sorry.
Well, self-prioritization, another big thing, and self-care. I need to do what's good for me, and boundaries. This is all kind of tools that I talk about all the time. But yes, Leigh, we're gonna have to wrap it up. But I think that you are absolutely awesome, and thank you for sharing your story and Gray with us. It's amazing, and it's been a pleasure, and I'm very happy to have connected with you. And I will be talking to you soon about Gray. So yeah, what one tip or insight or tool or something that you would say to someone that's facing a challenge?
It's okay to open up. It's always okay to open up. I mean, choose wisely. I mean, really like think about it, but it shouldn't be. It's not. It's actually more freeing than you think it is. It's awkward at first when you open up, but when you do, it's neutral to positive. You know, and it's a lot of it's how you frame it.
And I love that you're saying that because this is going in the Facebook group, which I'm created hopefully as a community for kindred spirits, like-minded individuals on their self-healing journey. So yes, 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 I second that. Open up. That's what we're here for. The safe space. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Leigh.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank
All right.
you. Bye.